you. I don't have a slide. Good afternoon. Am I audible? Awesome. Once again, good afternoon. And first of all, I would like to extend my thanks to Business Next for providing this opportunity to speak to this august audience. Uh, the topic today is very apt, and AI adoption to autonomous banking, building trust, scale, and inclusion. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about this topic, and I was speaking to Nishant, who's the CEO of Business Next, who will be joining us in a few minutes. This topic applies to literally any industry, right? I mean, you can think of, for example, beyond banking, if you were to apply to manufacturing, we are already talking about lights out manufacturing or dark factory, as they call it, right? In data centers, there's already sort of dark data centers where you really don't have to do anything, and most of the work is taken care of by either the tech or very soon some physical robots as well to change the devices, etc. If you take that analogy further, you can probably, you're seeing a lot of things happening even in agriculture, right? So you can imagine not exactly a lights out farming because probably plants won't work, but automated farming, which we are seeing a lot of examples of. Similarly, in healthcare, retail, and everywhere. But one thing that we have noticed, and we have been thinking about this topic a lot for many years now, not just after the advent of AI. In fact, in 2021, as we started looking at different technologies which are constantly automating every aspect of our life, each of the workflows that businesses usually deploy, we are seeing that deployed at a very significant scale now, but it's been happening for some time. In fact, there is certain consistency that exists across industries. And just to give you an example, if you look at any industry and if you look at any customer that's a consumer or the customer of that industry, they all follow a certain life cycle. They usually discover a need, right? That there is something that they need to buy or consume from that industry that's going to help in their lives. And then that process is also getting significantly automated. Then if you look at exploration of that choices that they need to do to fulfill that need in terms of what products are available, we are seeing a lot of automation there. And I'll give you example of banking in a minute. The third stage typically is after you have discovered a need and explored the choices as you go about buying a product, right? And then you use it, and if you need some help, ask and explore. And this is just one value chain which sort of consistently exists across, whether it's retail, financial services, within financial services across all the sub verticals like banking, credit card, etc. In 2021, we came up with this concept called autonomous finance. And that autonomous finance is nothing but a lot of automation happening across, like, think of it like single strand DNA molecules, or the cells sort of emerging across these different life cycle stages of the customer. And now we are reaching a stage where collectively all of these things are coming together, and we are inching or moving towards a world of truly autonomous finance. In this world, you can imagine the products as you, even if you even before you buy a product, even if you discover there's a need, there's someone who's analyzing your behavior, your aspirations, your life events, and they are triggering some sort of a marketing message which helps you discover there's a need that you have in your life, right? Without you actively looking for it. Then at the next stage, as you discover that need, that there's already a sort of barrage of maybe messages or some sort of personalized recommendation that you start seeing in terms of the choices that you have without you even having to lift a finger. It's showing up in our smartphones or in the digital spheres that we frequent. And likewise, there are choices of automated buying, automated onboarding, and things like that. And we are seeing this trend evolve continuously across this. As we look into the future, what we believe as we move towards this world of autonomous finance, there are four things that will become really, really key for the industry. And these four things, one of them you'll probably already start seeing a lot of, is what we call as this industry becoming highly invisible, right? So you will see a lot of service, you will use a lot of services, but you truly would not know who's behind it. I mean, if you look at the credit nowadays, Sometimes you end up buying credit card, you really don't know what's the bank behind it because there's a layer that's being run by someone else, right? So as we go forward, we'll see banking becoming even more assistive, more agentive, and very much personalized, and of course anticipatory, right? So it will become much more invisible. You will see a certain class of firms which will be controlling the relationship, but there's another class of firms which will become highly transaction oriented, and you really would not know how many firms were involved in the process of serving your need. The second important thing that will happen beyond invisible, which has already started to manifest, the banking and the financial services sector will become highly connected. And already we are seeing signs of it, but you can imagine a world where it becomes even more connected, right? Open banking obviously is a step in that direction that we see. Now, in that sort of world, ecosystems and platforms become obviously much more important. And we'll see as we go into the panel some of the discussions around how AI is powering some of these ecosystems, how businesses will deliver experiences which are highly connected, right? How they're integrating digital and physical touch points. For example, we are hearing about banks which are introducing rings, which are used not only for payments but for powering data to for other industries that they could be connected to, such as healthcare, right? If you look at on the commercial side, on the SME side, there's a lot of flow that's starting to get captured, and that data flow is being shared across different participants in the industry, and they are delivering services to the SMEs. The third thing beyond invisible and connected would be insights driven. And I cannot overstate the importance of insights driven in a forum which is around AI. And obviously, every insight that we talk about today is going to become even more intelligent. It'll be generated much more intelligently, and banks will capitalize on customer trust to create value from those insights, because banks, for all we know, are or financial services firm in general are the biggest custodian of trust, and the beneficiaries of the trust, and they are the ones who create the trust in the first place. So we'll see a lot of that happening as we go forward with respect to insights driven, because all those life cycle stages that I talked about will increasingly get a lot of insights embedded into them. And finally, and the most important thing, which I cannot uh, leave today without talking, is how banks and financial services firms will become much more purposeful. Because in the melee of all the things tech and all the innovation and all the automation, you cannot lose sight of the customer and what essentially they value. So we will see customers will rely, or rather bank or work with financial services firms who they believe are much more relatable to them, share similar values with them, or someone whom they can trust. So invisible, connected, insights driven, and purposeful, these are the four elements which will become increasingly important as we go towards the world of autonomous finance. Now, what will you need to build this kind of world? Do we have all the ingredients or the building blocks in place? And I would say we are fortunate to live in a country which is constantly expanding the digital public infrastructure that we have created, and that's already powering a large number of use cases. Obviously, we are all familiar with UPI and Aadhaar and everything else, but I'm just want to make it a bit interactive. How many of you in the room have heard of this thing called ULI, or Unified Lending Interface? Just by show of hands. Almost 50%, a little bit less. How many of you have heard of this thing called OCEN, which stands for Open Credit Enablement Network? Very few. And how many of you have heard of TREADS? I'm expecting even fewer hands. Okay. Just to give you an example of how as a country, we are expanding the stack that we have created, which is so commonly used by people like you and I in our consumer life, day to day, the UPI and everything, to say the commercial banking SMEs. We have all seen the UPI moment, but as we go forward, there's another undercurrent of capabilities that are getting built and expanded upon, which will be used by people who are in a very different sphere of life. For example, kirana stores, or small merchants and SMEs, etc. And in there, we're going to see the concept typical will move from what used to be an asset-backed lending. You needed to have some sort of a collateral, a land or a property, to what we call as a flow-based lending, right? With the amount of activity that you have, that you're doing, the data that you're collecting will give the banks the confidence to lend to you. Do you have, for example, 3 months of constantly, paid invoices or something? That'll give banks the confidence to give you something, and that's what we're going to build through these systems. ULI essentially combines all sorts of data. For example, your land assets, your other demographic data, and provides banks a complete picture of you as an individual or as someone who they can extend credit to. Oken makes it possible. That's a protocol which allows any digital platform or a commerce app to extend credit openly. And Threads is even more unique. It's basically helps SMEs to get their invoices paid even before their buyer is going to pay them. So normally payment terms of T plus 30 or 90 or whatever, but SMEs can put their invoices up on a system where their buyer can acknowledge that invoice, and then there are banks which are looking at the system on a regular basis, and they can pay that SME money right then and there, improving their working capital situation. And then banks will actually be kind of bidding for that. The SMEs will have a choice whether they get the invoice paid from Bank A, which is charging 9% interest rate, versus Bank B, which is charging 7% interest rate. So all of that is already starting to happen, and Threads is the platform which helps do it. So as you can imagine, the world around us is getting increasingly autonomous, and we have all the ingredients and building blocks in place. So this is the future that we are building. And today, as we go further, Business Next will share some of those examples as to what they are doing. And then we're going to come on to the panel. So I just wanted to introduce what the idea for the conversation today would be. But happy to have conversations as we go forward. So thank you so much. And I'm going to hand it over to Anjan to come and talk about his bit, and then we'll start the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh, for your insightful perspective and for setting the stage so effectively. And now I would like to invite all the panelists on the stage. Mr. Gurshan Rai Bansal, who's CGM and Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer at India Post Payment Bank. He's driving large-scale financial inclusion and digital transformation across one of the world's most expensive banking networks. And now Mr. Nishant Singh, founder and CEO of Business Next, who is he's at the forefront of building AI-powered platforms, enabling banks to move forward autonomous banking. And now to build on that, I'd like to invite Mr. Anjan Pandey, who is VP of Consulting at Business Next, and who works closely with financial institutions on the ground to translate AI strategy into measurable business outcomes. So, Anjan, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone, and very good afternoon. I hope the post-lunch syndrome is not kicking in yet, right? Can we have a good round of applause for the session? Okay, that's a nice energy. Thank you so much. So, since we are at the AI summit, and the fellow panelists before set a very good context as to how the industry is moving forward to it, we had a privilege to work with the largest financial institutes across the globe, and would like to share a few learnings as to what we have learned over our journey, and then we'll take the discussion from there. So we are Business Next, and what brings us to this sweet spot of AI and Bharat AI is that, we learn from a million bankers daily. The platform is used extensively to power the financial ecosystem of the country. More than a billion customers interact with the platform daily to do their service transactions or get a product from a bank or a financial institution or resolve a query. The platform is overall driving a huge penetration across the workforce in the financial institutions and is being hardly regarded by some of the leading industry analysts and the big fours of the world. To bring to a context, the platform is curated more than 2 decades of learning on the entire BFSI chain, not just from the banking, but from the insurance industries all the way from India to Southeast Asia to US and all the other perspectives. That also brings us to a very unique spot of understanding the regulator activism across each of these areas because, as Ashutosh mentioned, AI with guardrails and ethics is going to be the forefront of this generation. So, how does, as the the AI world evolves, how does economies transact from a banking perspective, and how does trust guardrails are established, is something that we are very uniquely positioned at. And we are very humbled to be trusted by some of the largest financial institutions in the country, and very humbled to power the fintech wave in the country more than 2 decades back when products were really not coming out of India. But one of the initial companies to bring that wave, built from India, built for the world, is something that's been the mantra for the company for so long. And I think the next slide is very special to all of us, and we all should take a proud in this. We are the only first Indian company to make on the top, zooming past all the Silicon Valley players in the financial space, and bringing business next right up on the top as the best CRM stack money could buy today for banks and financial institutes. This is being vetted by Forrester, very, very special wave. I'm very truly humbled to be here featuring there. And we continue to learn more and build more this. But what powers us today is the core philosophy of our company and the vision driving the product is being, we understood the fact that products and technologies and business will fundamentally evolve every 3 to 5 years. If I just plot 15 years on a timeline, I think all the veterans in the hall will appreciate this. When internet was born, everybody was building net banking, right? I don't need to visit bank. I can do it from my home. I mean, that was the new wave. 5 years fast track, Steve Jobs brings touch and iPhone, and everyone was on mobile bank, right? 5 years fast track, somebody brings chat GPT and people are saying, okay, now I don't need to even do mobile, I can just type and get things done, right? And we sincerely, thought this vision back in 2018, and we have kept this slide like this. And today we are in 2026, and we are exactly talking autonomous banking. Because we fundamentally believe that humans will continue to do best what they are good at. That means building trust, relationship, empathy, and all the human things, while machine should be doing all the things which machine is good at. Fraud monitoring, transaction scanning, fraud detection, cyber attacks, and all of those things. So this is being the foundation for us to think and put the vision in front of the world. But let me delve into a perspective of how do we see the banks of today or the financial institutes of today, and how does this transition will happen over a period of years. So, and excuse me, I mean, this could be a little touchy slide for some of the bankers, but what we see today, banking is, over so many years, banks have added capabilities by buying stacks. So every now and then when a new regulation or a technology comes, there is a bolt-on strategy in banks to go and acquire a product and start building on top of it. While that leads to, in some of the inside view of the bank, is actually there are too many systems, complex problems and brittle integrations to solve for it. And that leads into, what we call as data paralysis. Now comes the AI age, and how do you train your AI on so many systems of different data types? And I'm sure some of the bankers here would appreciate that there are still DB2s of the world running in the banks. While there are some new age Cassandra or the ClickHouse of the world, but there is still DB2 which is somewhere and nobody wants to touch it. So, how do you bring all of that convergence and bring autonomous and AI becomes a challenge, and is a conversation that boardrooms are now trying to drive at. But here is the good part that banks that we were trying to fundamentally run, it was a hard battle for us, but we did it. So we from the day one started building the product on the what we call as single entity model. So we said, when banks have to get more capability, does not mean the banks have to acquire more systems. Your system should be self-upgrading and learning to keep you on the best stack ever. So, with that philosophy in mind, we built all our capabilities for BFSI, keeping the single entity model at the center of the conversation. What that does mean is, banks that are running with us today autonomously have a data structure on which AI can be fed on, or on which the intelligence can be federated. Now those could be our models, banks model, anyone's models that they want. But this underlying problem is being taken care inherently by the dividend of our technology architecture, which is something that after so many years Forrester could recognize, and hence the conversation in BFSI. So that's us. What we bring to the table is solutions around financial services for you to solve your customer pains, digital, agentic AI, and all the other good capabilities. We have a booth down in Hall 1. More than almost, I invite every one of you to visit that stall once. And moving on from there, how do we see banks take this shift? Is eventually the product and channels will collapse in banks. Today we discuss between the product teams and channels team. What we certainly feel that products and channels will eventually merge. I'll talk to a banker, and the banker will write my query to a system which will be intelligently given by a principal or the autonomous brain of the bank, and my offers and my needs will be catered then and there. So what we used to run today, running complex segmentations, offer churning, all of that will be gone. I mean, we'll be just collapsing products and channels in what we call as the principle, which is something that Business X is now unveiling first at the AI Summit today, is to what we are building for the future of AI wave to come. But let's say this being the future, let me give you a time plot as to how to reach this generation. So as I plotted you the time, if you remember, we started with digital banking. What we are now thinking is actually cognitive banking. What does cognitive banking means to you is it's not just bolt on AI models on top of your banking stack. It's actually the intelligence systems which are connected by your shared reasoning. So one layer senses something and the other layer responds to address and do an STP on top of it, eventually leading you to the autonomous revolution. Let me just double click for you for 1 minute. What does cognitive banking mean for us? So think of this like a 6-layer architecture where each and every functional component of the bank is being taken care by an intelligent system. So right from identifying who I am as a customer, which is typically your identity intelligence, to figuring out what risk I might carry for a particular asset product or a liability product, which is your risk intelligence models, to figuring out if I'm saying something in human language, what is my intent? Am I looking for a case or a service or a new product? And finding out whether I'm contractually eligible to sign a paper for a mortgage lending, yes or no, that's your contract intelligence. Eventually leading you to giving me something end of the conversation, which is a value intelligence. So it's not just about getting one single model and putting it on your system. It's actually your shared layers of intelligence models acting together like a living organism to address to the customer need in a omni-channel fashion. So that's what we mean to say by cognitive banking, which is the era that is happening today. But let's take a look into the future of tomorrow. What does tomorrow hold for us? And if I were to just double click you on what autonomous banking could mean for all of us, is there going to be two pillars. One, there is going to be, as Ashutosh mentioned, banks will be invisible and a lot of things will be done by the machine. At the same time, there still be humans in the loop, which will be far more armed and far more informed to have a better and meaningful conversations. So we have broken down into two concepts, which is one is your autonomous architecture, and the second one, which we are calling as a second brain, or let's say an augmented banker. So while the autonomous banking architecture will be like a multi-sensory organism, reading from your call center scripts, all the way to making a decision from your principal core, which will be feeding from the data which banks today have, your data warehouses and all the single entities that we've been bringing, all the way to bringing to the product processors. And while empowering the humans to do what humans are good at, which is the second brain architecture, and AI will do basically the grunt work, understanding data patterns, compliance monitoring, transaction monitoring, pattern recognition. All of this will be offloaded to AI, as Ashutosh was saying, somewhere happening in the backend. Human doesn't care. While humans do more human things, what they are good at, building relationships, empathy, ethical judgments is something that humans will be good at. And probably the last slide where, we sincerely feel that banks will no longer be competing on a better product or a distribution channel. What banks will be competing on is your intelligence density, how intelligent you are across each of these layers, how good is your institutional memory, how good can you take decisions with trust and scale, and eventually it will not be the headcounts that will give you the growth. It will be the intelligence per headcount that will actually result into what we are going to see tomorrow banks leading into. So with that note, I'll take a pause and I'd like to request insights from the panel to build further on this topic. And in case there are any questions, we'd like to take it at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anjan. And we now have a great foundation, both from an industry research perspective and the real world implementation experience. I'd like to open the discussion to a broader panel. And with such accomplished voices on the stage, let's explore what autonomous banking truly means in practice. Over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Well, so I think you have met most of us here, well, at least two of us here. We are also joined by Gursharan from Indian Payments Bank. So maybe we can start the conversation with you, Gursharan, that considering that Indian Payments Bank, India Post Payment Bank, sorry, has been in existence for almost 4+ years now, and it's sorry, yeah, 7 years. Thank you. But it's probably one of the most understated bank, which is present in major part of the hinterlands of the country, and many customers are being served by it. So, what do you think of this whole movement of the digital to autonomous and cognitive? What exactly is happening at your bank?
Correct. So, as Nishant has just shown, we started India Post Payment Bank on the 1st of September 2018, and, the journey has been, entirely digital. Today, we are amongst the largest banks in a journey of almost 7.5 years only. Today, we are proud to say that we have a customer base of 13.5 crore customers approximately, and not even a single paper signed in the bank, not even a single application form signed in the bank. And today, we are competing on various fields, on various parameters. And, we have been pioneers on digitization and, introducing new products, services, etc. And specially targeted at the people who are unbanked, right? For example, if you imagine tribal in a village in Chhattisgarh or in Andhra, or a person living in the far corners of Arunachal or Himachal, so these people, so far nobody was reaching to them for banking. And also the other objective, from the supplier side, I would say, that from the government side, they were finding it extremely difficult to provide them the sustenance benefits and various other benefits directly to them without any middleman. They were finding it extremely difficult. So what we did was we digitized the whole process. We digitized the account opening and various other products of banking, remittances and payments, and bill payments, or insurance and loans, credits, everything we digitized. And this process was so simple, so intuitive, so reliable, so trustworthy, and of course, as Nishant mentioned, channels सारे merge हो जाएंगे, but our key channel of delivery was assisted. And I must say that that assisted channel had an existence in the lives of these people for almost the last 150 years, right? So they had a trust. और उस ट्रस्ट के बेसिस पे उसने वहां जा करके, हमारे ग्रामीण डाक सेवक ने, पोस्टमैन ने वहां पे खाते खोले, और वो खाता सिर्फ 3 मिनट में खाता खुला, आधार कार्ड के बेसिस पे खुला, केवाईसी उसने किया, और उसके बेसिस पे the cost of opening a khata, the cost of opening, you see that while you are expanding the reach, you have to also manage the economy. You have to also manage the cost. तो हमारा जो cost था एक खाता खोलने का, less than 4 rupees. लेस देन 4 रुपीज, जो कि नॉर्मल एक किसी भी नेशनलाइज बैंक या यूनिवर्सल बैंकिंग प्लेटफॉर्म को 500 या 600 रुपया लगता है, क्योंकि वो क्या करता है, और उसमें उसको 3 मिनट नहीं, उसको 15 दिन और 30 दिन लगते हैं, राइट? वी ओपन इट इन 3 minutes, and we gave him just a QR card, opened his account, and lo and behold, he was ready to bank. We gave him a mobile application, we gave him a virtual debit card. We didn't give him a physical debit card. We gave him a virtual debit card, we gave him UPI application, we gave him an Aadhaar enabled payment system. आधार एटीएम जो है, कैश निकालने के लिए अंगूठा लगाओ, पैसा निकालो from anywhere in the country. So we gave that, and that is how we started. Because see, this is a journey not for people like us who are sitting in the room. We are very technologically savvy. Imagine in our place, imagine a person, let us say our, mother or our father or our grandparent, or maybe our maid or our driver, who are not so tech savvy and who don't trust, some application with money. तो उसके पीछे there is a face, and that face, that person, that physical touch, that empathy was provided by the postman, and that is how we started. So today, out of 13 and a half crore customers, we have about 5 crore mobile app downloads, 5 crore mobile app downloads. And today we have, as we are expanding, we do almost 3.5 crore financial transactions, payment transactions on a daily basis. And, this is translating to almost 10% growth every month. So we are growing at a faster pace than the industry in terms of even UPI. So today, amongst all the banks, we are the ninth largest and competing with all the existing banks in the industry. So, we have various laurels to our credit. And as these, conversations also about AI and automation, so we are strengthening our assisted delivery. Assisted delivery by using items or stuff like Sales Copilot, and people who are doing mobile banking. So in the DIY mode, so we are trying to provide them nudges, push notifications, SMSs to, buy insurance, or, renew their insurance, or, keep on continue transacting, or, various other offers and incentives that we keep on offering to the customers, and also our sales force. So sales force is huge, almost 2.5 lakh people who are delivering the service. And though that sales force is also automated, that sales force is just having a device, which we have provided them from our own cost. That device is a micro ATM device along with a biometric, and that device is fully controlled, managed through MDM services, that is MDM, mobile device management services, remotely over the air. And there is a SIM which is provided, which is inbuilt into the device. So that delivery channel itself is humongous. And imagine, Gramin Dak Sevak who is just about 10th or 12th pass, उसके लिए उसको ट्रेन करना, सबसे पहले उसको रेडी करना, एंड उसको सर्टिफाई करना, बिकॉज आरबीआई सेज कि अगर आपने बैंकिंग सर्विस डिलीवर करना है थ्रू एनी चैनल और एनी पर्सन, ही हैज टू बी आईआईबीएफ एग्जाम सर्टिफाइड. तो उसको कम से कम जो है 7 दिन का ट्रेनिंग देना है. ट्रेनिंग देने के बाद उसको एग्जाम पास करना है, सर्टिफाई करना है, एंड देन ओनली ही इज रेडी टू प्रोवाइड दैट बैंकिंग सर्विस. उसके बाद इंश्योरेंस के लिए आईआरडीए सर्टिफाइड, कि आपको आईआरडीए के लिए आपको एक सर्टिफिकेशन लेना है. अगर आपने आधार की कोई सर्विस देनी है, यूआईडीआई बोलता है आपको एक सर्टिफिकेशन करना है, उसके लिए ट्रेनिंग करना है, राइट. देन आवर ओन प्रोडक्ट्स एंड सर्विसेज, जिसके लिए वो सडनली वो भूल जाएगा, उसको लोकल लैंग्वेज में उसको ट्रेन करना है. तो लोकल लैंग्वेज में उसके पास वीडियोस होने चाहिए कस्टमर को बताने के लिए. ही हैज टू हैव वीडियोस that he can show to the customer in the local language. So all that assistance, all that stuff is being provided digitally. So that is the good part. और इसके बाद भी सर और बहुत सारी बातें कर सकते हैं, but the biggest factor now, the challenge that is coming to us is the risk factors. तो आज की तारीख में आप सब लोग देख रहे हैं, गरीब आदमी है, ही इज वेरी गलिबल, ही डजंट नो, उसको कई बारी पढ़ने में मैसेज भी नहीं समझ में आता है, एंड ही नॉर्मली इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन द सीटी ऑफ द हाउस, जो हम सीटीओ बोलते हैं, किसको रेफर कर रहा हूं आप जानते हैं? सिटी ऑफ द हाउस इज ए चाइल्ड। जो बच्चे हैं वो आज की तारीख में पेरेंट्स के जो हैं घर का है सीटीओ हैं, तो उनको हर चीज में उनको इन्वॉल्व करना पड़ता है। तो जैसे मैं आपको एक एग्जांपल देता हूं, जैसे ये लाड़की बहना स्कीम जो थी, दैट वाज लॉन्च्ड बाय मध्य प्रदेश गवर्नमेंट। अब उसमें बहुत सारे महिलाओं के हमने खाते खोले। अब महिलाओं के जब खाते खोले तो हर महीने 2,000 रुपया उसके खाते में क्रेडिट होने लगा। अब जैसे ही पैसा क्रेडिट होता था तो महिलाएं जो हैं वो पोस्ट ऑफिस में लाइन लग जाती थी। आधे किलोमीटर की लाइन लगी हुई है कि हमें पैसा निकालना है। अब 2,000 रुपये मिले हैं, उसको निकालें ताकि कहीं पैसा वापस मोदी जी ले ना लें। अब सही में यही बोलते थे वो लोग कि मोदी जी की पैसा वापस ना मंगा लें, इसलिए हम तो पैसा आज ही निकालेंगे। और वो बेचारी महिलाएं जो हैं 5-5 किलोमीटर से 10-10 किलोमीटर से आ रही हैं, लाइन में लग रही हैं, धूप में लग रही हैं। तो हमने क्या करा, एक स्पीकर सिस्टम एक लिया। एक स्पीकर सिस्टम में एक रिकॉर्डेड मैसेज हमने प्ले करना शुरू किया हिंदी में, और वहां पे पोस्टर लगवाए कि आप जो है अपने आप घर में बैठे हुए पैसा निकाल कर सकते हैं, इस्तेमाल कर सकते हैं, किराना की दुकान पे खरीदारी कर सकते हैं। आपको पोस्ट ऑफिस पैसा निकालने के लिए जरूरत नहीं है आने की। और वो हमने उसको ये लिखा उसमें कि आप इसका एक फोटो खींचें, फोटो खींच के घर में किसी बच्चे को या जिसको मोबाइल बैंकिंग डाउनलोड करनी आती है, जो आपको सिखा सकता है, उसको आप दिखाएं कि ये स्टेप्स हैं उसमें, 1 2 3 4 5 ये स्टेप्स हैं, मोबाइल बैंकिंग डाउनलोड करिए और घर से ही बैठ करके यूज करिए। और आप मानेंगे 50 to 70% ऑफ दी विमेन दे डाउनलोडेड दी ऐप, और वो प्रोसेस लगा उसमें, उन्होंने डाउनलोड किया और उसके बाद फिर रश जो है वो धीरे धीरे कम हुआ। एंड इनफैक्ट जो एमपी के जो चीफ मिनिस्टर थे, व्हेन ही हर्ड अबाउट इट, ही वाज रियली वेरी हैप्पी कि चलिए आपने मोबाइल बैंकिंग की तरफ भी लोगों का ध्यान आकर्षित किया और उनको सिखाया, उनको पढ़ाया। अब हमारे पास चैलेंज जो सबसे बड़ा अब आने लगा है, विच इज दी रिस्क, कि ट्रांजैक्शंस के लिए बहला फुसला करके ओटीपी ले लेते हैं या उसके पैसे जो हैं वो निकाल लेते हैं, उनको फ्रॉडलेंट एक्टिविटी में फंस जाते हैं लोग। तो रिस्क मॉनिटरिंग और जो है एएलएम एंड ऑल दिस एएमएल एक्टिविटीज, इसके लिए हम लोगों ने अभी बहुत सारे साइबर कंट्रोल एंड रिस्क कंट्रोल मेजर्स जो हैं उसके अंदर बैंक को अभी आज की तारीख में इन्वेस्टमेंट करना पड़ रहा है। So there are processes like, there are risk module like RTTM, real-time transaction monitoring modules. There are processes where we keep on analyzing month on month. We get stop the payments, restrict the payments in hotspot areas, restrict the payments for certain people who are doing more transactions, sudden transactions. यानी कि अगर मान लीजिए एक अकाउंट जो है फॉर एग्जांपल अनयूज्ड है फॉर द लास्ट से 6 months और 7 months, सडनली उसमें वो ट्रांजैक्ट करने लगता है और बहुत सारी वॉल्यूम ऑफ ट्रांजेक्शन 10 15 20 ट्रांजेक्शन पर डे की होने लगी, और सडनली वॉल्यूम एंड वैल्यू ऑफ ट्रांजेक्शन सडनली इंक्रीज, उसके ऊपर इमीडिएटली वी पुट अ कर्व because we know that some kind of fraudulent activity might happen. So these kind of we have certain rules and regulations which we apply so as to prevent the frauds and these kind of things. So with that,
Well,
I
thank
think
you.
I've
The
spoken
great
quite a
story.
lot.
So please
So thank you.
give a big round of applause for India's Post Payments Bank. Uh, Besides the fact that digital and the AI and autonomous, one thing it clearly ticks mark on is the inclusion. You know, that's something we, as a country, being so diverse and having sort of different stratas of society with the level of education and everything. I think it's great to have this story of inclusion. So thank you so much. I think I'm gonna maybe go to you, Nishant, now because I think you're the only person who stayed silent all this while. Based on what you've heard so far, and you speak to banks in India and banks outside, what do you think is the time frame in which we're going to move from where we are today and all this AI initiatives, and then you have your examples of agents sort of coming in and getting deployed across different processes. What's the time frame that we need to look at for any bank which is probably looking to set up their or start their journey towards autonomous banking? Maybe in broad stroke from process perspective, which processes are more mature, which are less mature, where exactly will be when it comes to autonomous finance or autonomous banking in say 3 to 5 years time frame?
Thank you, guys. Um, okay, so let me break this answer into two parts. Where are banks today? What Anjan built for you was what we call as the start of cognitive banking. where intelligence that was in silos is coming together and forming the first ever intelligence layer. And there are almost like 6 classifications of intelligence we do, including the risk that Sir was talking about right now, being one of the live counters on that. So where we see today is banks are in the early phase where last year they were deploying a lot of AI-driven use cases. So these are really edge use cases driven by AI, largely trying to drive productivity. What we see this year is a rise of agents. So whether it's agents that we run for banks or agents own, or like banks' own team trying to build agents, what you're seeing globally is a shift of consumption from what classically used to be LLM training to inference side. And therefore, what you're seeing banks today is to not only dealing with one or two agents, but in some of our banks, we are now starting to deal with fleet of agents, which means multiple agents. And therefore, as you can believe, your bottleneck shifts to things like how do you govern this pattern, right? How do you risk and orient this pattern? And how do you orchestrate this on scale? So to me, banks are at this place of cognitive banking where you can think of that having three things. One is this intelligence layer that can also execute. Marry that with a proprietor data stewardship, which means intelligence of data, intelligence of individuals, that kind of really allows that risk spectrum to spread. And eventually, this orchestration framework that kind of allows this to be done on scale with multiple agents trying to run and finish the job. And we do see over the next 3 to 4 years, as digital second brains kick in the bank, a lot of what, let's say, an RM does classically today will start to migrate to one instruction set to an agent. So literally, we believe 60 to 70% of what you do daily as a grunt work can be migrated to this second brain architecture. That's what we see in the first 3 months. Oh, sorry, first 3 years. And I think after that, it's a very radical take that we have on autonomous because, all innovations are compounding in nature. You came up with a wheel and that then enabled automobiles and stuff like that. So now imagine if we had this level of intelligence improving, and then you also have an industry that starts to kind of deal in, imagine for a minute you had a digital rupee, which you have today, but imagine if it goes on scale. Then you have a currency which is programmable also. It can be auto tagged, the currency can carry KYC. Uh, Imagine a currency like this with an autonomous infrastructure becomes very programmable, right? Therefore, the shape of how eventually autonomous banks will evolve is very different. So I'll not go into that right now. If you have time, definitely go back and visit this. But I think in the next 3 years, expect banks to be a combination of these things, working hard on the unified intelligence layer, not intelligence in silos, not intelligence as a bolt-on. The second is the proprietary data. Data warehouses, unfortunately, are not great places to pull decisions from. Single entity model, as we describe it, where you are live sensing data about an individual. That's what's going to power a lot of this next generation of use cases. And then, of course, the ability to orchestrate this on scale. Now, when you bring all of this, you can apply it into any condition because what AI today gives you is a complete multimodal structure. So if imagine the Indian Post Bank, people can now talk to their applications in 11 Indian languages. If you look at how collection calling has started to invert today, you have a majority of collection callings now happening on a AI-based platform. And what is the tuning we are doing? We are not trying to teach it. Let's just take an example. We're not teaching it Telugu. We're teaching it the dialects of Telugu now. So that is the compounding effect. So like different districts have different accents and then the fine tuning of that. So you're already seeing this. We see this move into a more central governance structure. Today, obviously, banks are grappling with governance of this because imagine if every application was to bring a LLM voice and all of that. How do you set up a universal guardrail? How do you set up universal risk management around that? So again, those are things I think which is going to keep banks busy for the next 2 years. But again, very, very excited for where we are, very excited for India because we are the use case capital of the world. Very excited because we live in a country that has built such a spectacular digital public infrastructure. And we haven't stopped. We have just got started. So that married with our diversity, married with our pressure of cost per transaction, married with the technology that we're enabling is what has us really excited. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's a great answer. So I'm going to build on that a little bit, and then I'm going to maybe come to you with another question, and then probably we'll open for the audience to ask questions. So to the examples that you're giving, right, and they are great. For example, in conversational banking, you're talking about different languages being used to communicate with the people in their vernacular, right? So all of that, and that's all great. However, for banking to be truly become autonomous, or for that matter, any part of financial services, or for that matter, any industry, right? There has to be a lot more personalization that needs to happen, right? So, for example, if I'm speaking to someone in whatever language that they speak, unless the conversation also has the elements that matter to them as an individual, not just because we speaking the same language, but what life stage they are in, what sort of needs that they have, what sort of transaction history that they have. So there's a lot of work between the agents that speaking to that individual and what you have in the organization in terms of the context, right? And that's where I'm assuming a lot of engineering that needs to happen. Today we are obviously all talking about RAG and how we inform the models, but we are kind of working on this idea around context engineering, which is essentially about getting all that data which is sitting in your structured as well as non-structured sources, and you engineer them in a manner and build the pipelines to make sure the agents are fully informed of what that particular individual lifestyle is. But as you do that, you mentioned the responsible AI, the ethics and all that, and now we have DPDP also in place because we want to make sure the privacy is not sort of breached and other ethical considerations are taken care of. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I think we will be remiss if we don't touch upon, like you said, the guardrails that the organizations and the banks need to put in place to make sure we are not stepping on the wrong direction.
I think that's a very valuable feedback. What's the role of privacy in all of this? Let me just dumb it down to that simple, right? Um, See, the very fact that you need to know a person, you want to have intelligent conversation, means you need to know a lot about it. As your question itself assumed, these are structures we know about a person. And then there comes an act which says, I have a right to forget it. Yes, you can. But where is the world going to? The world is going to what we call as the power of one bank. You don't need a standard product. You need a product that is structured to your need, how you get paid. Maybe you have a bonus at the end of the year. Everything has to be sharpened, not in broad strokes, but in one stroke. For that, we do need to understand you as a character. Okay, so the AI cognitive structure is very different from a human cognitive structure. So imagine AI. It can remember almost a million token today in context, and it can actually draw um, deductions out of that context, not get fatigue and so on. So is it possible to do a power of one banking when you have a right to forget? The answer is yes. We call it archetypes. And in a classical model of marketing, you try to break segmentation to, let's say, a segmentation of 15,000. And that's, let's just say, complicated enough if you have 13 crore customers, because they will behave like that. So if you kind of think you can put archetypes on steroids, I can still have the right to forget data, but define you very closely with that archetype and still meet my aspiration as a bank. uh, I think I think right to privacy is very important, but I also feel it is hard to implement with just a simple jurisdiction. Look at every place you leave a data trail on. Forget the banks. banks are probably the most regulated entity where you have a footprint, and regulators are always, anybody who runs a bank or NBFC knows how hard it is to do an RBI audit or in any other company. So I think the point now is, yes, DPDP Act is important. Companies are, we are figuring out ways to respect that, but we are also figuring out ways to remember the context in which we engage with you. Does that make sense?
Thank you. So I think we have kind of touched upon most of the points that we wanted to touch as a panel with respect to the privacy, the inclusion, and ethics and everything. Now maybe we can open up for the audience to ask questions. You want to add something, Anjan? Yeah.
So, so maybe not as a question, but maybe to you, Nishant. Of course, all the AI thing happening across, and so much things about AI. Just from a normal, ordinary citizen side, what changes for me, or any implementations that you may have seen with any public sector bank where AI has given the dividend back to the citizen, let's say helping me file my grievance or helping me solve something which could have taken me days, like sir said, some AI happening around it. So if you could give a real example for the audience here as to, what will eventually give back to the citizens as to when banks embrace all of this.
Okay, that was the unofficial question. Joking. But no, I think that's a very good question. Like, I think what we may be talking may sound abstract, 30,000 feet, but that's how fundamentally strategies are made and then curated to execute. But look at SBI as a bank. Okay, I'm just picking up SBI because again, they have 40 crore customers. That's 40%, 30% of India. And one of the biggest way they've used AI with us is basically like what we built them was a CRH portal. It's a portal that speaks 11 languages. You can come and type in English. We will automatically understand it, recategorize it to understand what exactly is the category, subcategory of problem you're trying to tell us. Then we'll go get the transactions that you may be talking about. You can simply flag those transactions and bingo will go to resolve for it. So literally what you're seeing now is not a need to walk to a branch, not a need to dial up a phone. You can do this on a mobile without any footprint, not requiring to download any application, okay, and not learning any UX. Because today what has happened is a lot of focus was on, oh, how good is my UI? It's gone. The new world is not about UX. The new world is about agents. The new language is English, right? And the new language is voice. So in the phase 2 that you see us launch, it's basically you having a conversation with the application and not even typing that, right? And again, we're still following your instruction. We're still doing these things. Great experience for a customer. He can do this at 2 o'clock at night, not wait for the official banking hours. He can do this without learning anything. He can do this without downloading anything. Okay, so again, that's just an example. And one will think how well this will be absorbed in a diverse ecosystem like SBI. You'll be amazed. We do more than 5.5 lakh hits every day. 5.5 lakh. Can you imagine how much load deflection is happening with just one single page? That is so smart, right? So that's an example of how India is very boldly stepping in and creating experiences which are unmatched anywhere in the world. And I think that is why, again, I want to go back to that point. It is not a matter of do we build LLM and not, we can catch up to that. That's a little bit like fuel in your car, right? I mean, it's really what you do with that fuel. And I think given the agency that we have, that diversity, the scale, the DPI, I think we are the learning ground for the world. We will export these ideas to the world, not the other way around. Thank you. I think now for the audience.
Yeah, just to add to your point, how this is going to benefit the end customer, right? So, we have lots and lots of examples. Like, for example, I just mentioned, something like, how we try to, solve the problem of people trying to withdraw cash. So in our segment, again, as, I have mentioned that, a customer who is usually who's dealing successfully with us, who is transacting banking with us, you know, probably there are so many other products and services which we can probably pitch to him, but there's nobody who can physically go and pitch to him, right? And these are something, and that too, as Nishant mentioned, that in their local language and something in a personalized manner. So, for example, we have a beautiful product which is called accidental insurance. Now, example that let's say PM Kisan Swanidhi ka paisa jaise hi khate mein aaya. Now Kisan, he works in the field, he drives his two-wheeler, he works on the harvester, he works on that, chara wali machine and all that, and he's prone to so many accidents, so many, and women who are working day in, day out. So what we do is we prompt them to buy accident insurance, and which is coming at a cost of just about 500 rupees for the whole year for a 10 lakhs rupees cover, and which is giving OPD, IPD benefits also in case of accidents. So imagine, this kind of products reaching out or coming out back to the customer, because we cannot depend, finally, we cannot depend on our agent only, to bring these, products to the knowledge of the end user or the customer. And similarly, students, we can prompt them to download the UPI application, do digital transactions, or use the virtual debit card and stuff. So many things, it is ultimately the customer who benefits. For example, we did almost last year, we did almost 28 lakh insurance policies of this accident insurance and all. And we collected almost 100 crore of premium, but ultimately the amount of claim that we paid was in thousands, and number of claims, and amount we paid was 125 crore. So imagine the number of families who got benefited from these claims. Accidents kuch ka hua, kuch ka death hua, and the kind of, and they were never expecting कि 10 lakh का बीमा हम लोग को मिलेगा. So these are the kind of stuff. ऐसे हम लोग का health insurance के बहुत सारे products हैं. इसी तरह से अभी mutual fund investments. For example, our finance minister, she has mentioned in her budget speech that IPPB will act as a catalyst for financial inclusion through the distribution network. तो ये बजट में 2-3 साल से पिछली बार IPP का नाम आ रहा है. तो that is the kind of importance that we have. But I think this, the use of this agentic AI and prompting of the or working as a sales co-pilot, or nudging the customer to get more and more benefits, etc. That is something which the AI can really do well, and that is what we have actually started. जैसे उसमें आपकी उसमें जर्नी में भी स्टेजेस आया था, तो असिस्टेड डिजिटल असिस्टेड बैंकिंग से हम लोग gradually we are moving into the AI module, and I think the next 3 to 5 years is something which where we are looking at taking more and more benefits to the customers in the rural areas, जिनको कोई लोग पूछता भी नहीं है, और पूछ इसलिए भी नहीं सकता क्योंकि ऐसा नहीं है कोई चाहता नहीं है, बट पूछ इसलिए नहीं सकता क्योंकि वहां तक जाना और उनको सर्व करना इज ऑलमोस्ट लाइक इम्पॉसिबल. अगर आप मान लीजिए इम्फाल से किसी गांव के अंदर आप जाना भी चाहते हैं, आपको 6 घंटे जाना लगेगा अंदर फॉरेस्ट में, और 6 घंटे वापस आना लगेगा, और आपको मालूम नहीं आप वापस आओगे भी कि नहीं. So how to reach out to those customers, how to benefit those customers is something which, we are doing at scale. We are doing at, digitally, and we are doing at, that digital public infrastructure is also the physical being converted into the digital. And now gradually it will become more and more autonomous. So that is what I foresee as the journey. And I think this is a good step, and the way we are moving forward, and the way we are envisaging, and the way we are envisioning our journey in the future. It's really going to be really wonderful, amazing, and superb. And we'll be setting really a great example for the entire world.
We have some minutes remaining for audience engagement. Please, the gentleman in the first, and then over there. Mike's on the way.
Hello. Hi, my name is Swapnil Dikshit. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Avanti Finance. It is a financial inclusion platform co-founded, not just invested by Mr. Tata and Mr. Nilekani.
Can you big
Mr. Tata and Mr. Nilekani. My question is, sir, to you, the gentleman from to the right. Sorry, I'm a bit fuzzy with all the names here. Question is, sir, when the banks are directly reaching out with so much intelligence and technology and everyone having a phone in their pocket, directly to the customers. What is the role of the NBFC sector and how is it going to change? One. And second, are the banks actually open to the idea of directly reaching? I mean, I'm a CPO of an NBFC and I sometimes joke that if banks did their jobs, we wouldn't be needed. So what is going on here? I mean, just a subjective overview would be okay.
Very good question. In fact, just to give you my example only, in our bank, as a payment bank, we are not allowed to lend. Okay, we are not allowed to lend. And we have, across the country, we have 26,000 pin codes, right? 26,000 pin codes में से banks जो हैं, who are willing to lend are, very few. And the kind of customer segment which the banks are willing to lend is, the top end of the customers. They are not going to. Yes, exactly. So हम लोग क्या कर रहे हैं, like for example for the lending, we are working as a referral partner to many of the NBFCs. तो हम लोग के banks भी partner हैं. बैंक्स को के कुछ बैंक्स के साथ हमने पार्टनरशिप किया तो हम लोगों ने उसका रिलेशनशिप टर्मिनेट कर दिया बिकॉज वी आर फाइंडिंग सो मेनी रिस्ट्रिक्शंस एंड सो मेनी इश्यूज डीलिंग विद देम. So now we are tying up with a lot of NBFCs because NBFCs, they're playing a very key role in terms of financial inclusion at the last mile, especially in tier 3, 4. अभी 5 and 6 में नहीं पहुंचे हैं, NBFCs भी नहीं पहुंचे हैं, माइक्रो फाइनेंस इंस्टीट्यूशंस पहुंचे हैं, बट 3-4 के अंदर जो है हमारे जो NBFC पार्टनर्स हैं, they are willing to open up, they are willing to do a lot of lending based on, जैसे आपने बोला, flow based lending or transactional basis lending. So these NBFCs are where they are serving as the backbone for us in terms of providing those kind of products where banks find it difficult and they don't reach out and they don't want to risk reaching over there. So I think that is one segment where we are playing, we are doing a good business.
Let me add to what probably you're trying to ask. Look, a traditional bank has a very broad spectrum of play. Both from a risk and a process optimization problem. What NBFCs are very good at is going into that one decisive product and then optimizing risk for that. So which means your arbitration is always better risk. For example, what Sir said that, the traditional bank had so many protocols on how it can be lent and stuff like that. But that's exactly what you arbitrate. You arbitrate risk, right? And NBFCs come in various shape and sizes. So for example, Indian Postal Bank they're trying to kind of be the poster child of trust. You had a Dakia who used to come to your home. We all grew up with those spaces. And they are now leveraging that trust with your money and therefore bringing people into not just open bank accounts, but operating bank accounts. And therefore the reach out of government into these direct schemes. But NBFCs professionally are lending organizations against zero collateral, some collateral, unsecuritized collateral, securitized. Actually, we today have Alex. Please, big hand for Alex, Muthoot Finance. They were one of the pioneers of gold lending even before it was official. But look at the amazing scale and how they've done this at par excellence across India, right? So what I'm trying to say is that NBFCs come in various shape and size, but eventually the moat is always going to be your risk segmented for the product of one or two, where you will excel over the banks simply because the spread. Now, can this change over next 5 years? Well, let's just see how well autonomous goes. It's hard to execute some of these strategies, right? The second question, please.
Good afternoon, myself, Chartered Accountant Gaurav Arora. So my question to...
Can you bring the mic closer to you?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I am Chartered Accountant Gaurav Arora. My question is to Nishant sir, and I wanted him to expound on how the AI adoption is going to change MSME credit, specifically the credit function in the MSME. If you can share some thoughts on it. Thank you.
I think every bank today is chasing MSME credit. If you understand growth, corporate can only arbitrage so much of big projects. So if India has to shine, it is MSME at the core of how they do it. And as we bring more GST, MSME for the first time is far more formalized than it was, let's say, 4 years ago. So today, for example, a GST reference is a basic of an MSME, right? Now you have amazing workflows that arbitrate on Insta loan based on your GST returns and how much can we do. Unfortunately for us, the small enterprises may not still represent its entire business on an MSME portal yet, because they go in for the sector logs or a bunch fees kind of a provision in the GST. If you ever visit a stall there is a very interesting demo where any of the NBFC people who's carrying a mobile app can simply take a photograph of a shop, and what that'll do is it'll suddenly build up the inventory of that shop from that photograph, okay, and it'll give you an accosted value of the inventory he holds. So suddenly now micro lending on that as a collateral is less risk than just a simple blank entry on the GST. So I think there are many interesting stories around that. We are working with many banks to crack into that. But absolutely, that is one of the biggest problems AI is going to solve for in India. And if we really want a shining India that will grow and will become the number 2 eventually in the world, then MSME is what we have to solve for. And AI is bringing incredible value. Everything from a CPV verification to the actual cross-section of ownership of the shop, to all of that is that brilliant, DPI that he was talking about. And the more of these services that they come along, these are not untrustworthy records. They're trustworthy records. Therefore, the entire speculation and how you kind of innovate on this.
If I were to simply add to what Nishant mentioned, see what's happening right now. We are moving from a world which was very, I would say, digitized in a very insignificant manner to highly digitized, right? So the number of data points that are available to banks and NBFCs to lend out are increasing. Because I remember about 8 years ago, I met this small NBFC out of Bangalore, and at that time, the alternate data that they were collecting on their own was a big thing. And they were literally, like Nishant mentioned, going out to those small MSMEs, taking pictures, and even small micro sort of enterprises going to their places, figuring out whether they had TV or fridge to kind of get their credit worthiness, etc. But that's moving further. It's getting increasingly automated in terms of data collection. So as we move towards more and more automated data collection, the ability to for the MSMEs to get the credit right at that time when they are like in the process of transacting will significantly increase. But like Nishant mentioned, there will still be some places where the data isn't there or would not come up. Uh, those are the only places with NBFCs and others who are more innovative with these approaches will have to solve for. But we are increasingly moving in that direction. Open is of course one, and even ULI, which is more in that direction. Okay, gentleman over there.
Very good evening to all of the panelists and delegates. Yeah. So my question is to Gosharan sir. I have seen Postal Bank being built up on the basis of trust since the beginning. So now when artificial intelligence is being brought into picture, how can we shift that trust from humans to autonomous infrastructure, autonomous banking, when we don't yet have certifications for AI/ML based applications, and there is no proper benchmarking?
So yes, of course, the trust is there. The trust is there. But yes, as more and more digitization is happening, autonomous processes, etc., are getting developed, and they are going to come into play. But the fact or something behind the mind of the customer is always going to be there, that in case something happens, or in case I get stuck somewhere, in case my money gets stuck somewhere, my transaction gets stuck somewhere, there is always a Gramin Dak Sevak or a postman behind. I can contact him, because जैसे आप समझ सकते हैं, गांव में अगर उसको मालूम है, उसके पास हर आदमी के पास पोस्टमैन का नंबर जरूर होता है, और कई बार ऐसा होता है ग्राम प्रधान और ये सब लोग भी कई बार ग्रामीण डाक सेवक होते हैं, और बहुत एक प्रोमिनेंट इन्फ्लुएंसर या प्रोमिनेंट पर्सनालिटी रहता है, तो उसलिए उसके पास एक माइंड में कंफर्ट रहता है कि इवन इफ आई एम delving into digital or I am getting more and more autonomous in my transactions, but in case something goes bad or in case I get stuck somewhere, the Gramin Dak Sevak is there. And that is one reason why the usage has really accelerated nowadays. People are more and more getting into this. एंड फॉर एग्जाम्पल इवन अगर एक गांव में एक मर्चेंट हम लोग या तो गूगल पे होता है या फोन पे रहता है, बट हम लोग का एक डाक पे है। सो अगर हम उसको मर्चेंट को बोलते हैं कि आप डाक पे ले लीजिए रादर देन गूगल पे, तो ही इज मोर कॉन्फिडेंट अबाउट डाक पे, क्योंकि उसको मालूम है कि अगर कल को कोई ट्रांजेक्शन फंस गई या कहीं दिक्कत आ गई तो पोस्टमैन उसको सुलझा देगा। So that kind of trust factor always plays.
So more on safety, the risk resiliency for.
Let me add to that. I think your question was, how will AI help in reinforcing trust? Is that your question?
Yes. I mean,
okay.
How the uneducated people be able to trust on the autonomous banking?
Yeah, let me explain that. Look, I think the very basic architecture that you saw, that we either showed you for cognitive and all, has a very strong play on trust. And trust is not built on one layer. It's a multi-layer architecture where you build trust. So everybody understands guardrails, okay? And that's one way to enforce trust. But then you also have agents, which are guardian angels that supervise all of this autonomous story to then kind of really pick up stuff that they feel is deflecting trust, down to the point of your choice of model. So let me make it real for you. So let's take two of the largest LLM provider. You take OpenAI and you look at Claude. Okay, Claude in its fabric builds trust and ethics, which means if it gets into a situation that is unknown to it, which you will in autonomous cases, it will use its ethics to engage. Versus OpenAI is more directed in nature, which means if it gets into this ambiguous story, it will do what the supervision model says by default. Okay, so those are the levels of trust. Now, I can go into lots of technicality, but bottom line I'm trying to say is trust is something which is very, very important. Add to trust is being enforced by RBI. Let's take India as an example, which means at some point in time, if today fraud happened, there was an individual being hanged. In the new world, how will you hang an agent? That means agents have to be more auditable and neutral and not biased. For example, when you look at our tech stack, one of the first things we invented 3 years ago was the thought engine. So thought engine is actually a complete journal of how every LLM is taking a decision. So it kind of says, this is the data I got, this is what I think it is, this is what I'm doing, and this is the outcome, right? So literally everything is far more documented in this new world with this thought engine kind of technology that we bring to you than it was in the old world. So again, the layer of trust is multi-zoned, multi-layered, and absolutely, trust becomes the foundation of any stack today, tomorrow, forever, because that's what banks are.
And just to add, to RBI person couldn't be here on this panel today. I think he got sick. But there was another person from RBI speaking in a different panel yesterday, and I was hearing him, and he mentioned very clearly that RBI is going to subject all the agents and all the tech that banks are building to the same level of scrutiny and test as they are doing with the human, right? So there's no way you can simply get away by saying that, hey, AI did it, and we don't know how AI does it. So that's the level of testing and qualification and certification and regulation that RBI is going to put.
And in fact, just to build on that point, 6 months ago, we did a roundtable in GFF on autonomous banking, which was a representation of standards for autonomous to RBI. So if you ever want to have a paper of how banks are thinking about trust today, you can actually go to our site or go to our stall and pick up that autonomous banking representation that we're doing to RBI. So again, it's a typical regulator problem. Can you regulate something that does not exist? You can only participate in a standard setting and then kind of, come back with regulation really faster. And good ways and bad ways, both ways. And RBI is an immense learning. I mean, I can just give example of Indian Postal Bank, we were having a discussion. You know, they were the first ones to really come up with a cyber insurance with every account they were publishing, because their people were so vulnerable. And when RBI audited and saw this great thing they had done, they went and made it a default, right? So again, so it's not like RBI can dream of better standards. I think it's a industry collective where we kind of create guidance paper, we kind of try to solve for it, take RBI's view, and then we kind of, it's a circle that'll keep on. Sometimes the industry will be ahead, sometimes the regulator will be ahead. So I think that'll happen. But trust is
I think
by far.
AI will also have to be trained, especially in the banking segment, to have its limits defined, where the buck stops. Ultimately, where he feels, or AI feels, or AI engine or agent feels that he cannot further answer any further questions, he has to just refer it to a call center or somebody or a human. So, I mean, ultimately, there are only certain roles and rules which will be defined for the AI as well. And that is what I think the banking sector especially has to work on, because we cannot unlimitedly keep on engaging into something which we cannot protect.
So with that confidence in place, that even though AI and autonomous is changing the way we are going to be doing banking and finance, I think we can leave this room assured that we are not going to be completely taken for granted by AI, or not taken on a wild ride. I would like to thank all of you for being here, and thank my fellow panel members. So thank you so much. I think this is the close of the session. Thank you.